Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today I'm doing a Charmer Familiar Possessed deck profile. So I'm really excited this you guys because this deck is a really amazing old school deck that is just super fun to be able to play with, especially with all the techs I have in this deck. I've changed up a lot since the last time I profiled it and I'm really excited to show you guys all those changes. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in a single video, getting a signed card to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, you're going to be playing a single copy of the Earth Familiar Possessed, one copy of the Wind Familiar Possessed, one copy of the Fire Familiar Possessed, one copy of the Water Familiar Possessed, and a single copy of the Dark Familiar Possessed. The reason you're playing these at this number is because you need them for your spells and traps, but they're basically vanilla monsters in this build. You don't play the light one because I have another really amazing tech card that I'm playing, which makes it so you don't need to play the light monster. We then play 3 copies of Fairy Tale Luna. Fairy Tale Luna is a really good card for this deck because this card has the ability that when this card is normal summoned, you can add a spellcaster type monster with 1850 attack points from your deck to your hand, which basically makes it so that you can search any of your familiar possessed monsters. This card is also very good because it has 1850 attack points itself to be able to basically count for your light familiar possessed monster. It has a really good on field effect that basically is a walking compulse with the ability that once per turn during either player's turn, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and your opponent can send one card of that monster's name from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard to negate this effect. Otherwise, return both this card and that monster to the hand, basically making this card walking compulse, which is really great, especially if you know that your opponent's only playing a single copy of the card that you're targeting. We then play 3 copies of Archfiend Eater. Archfiend Eater is a good 3 of because it's basically just a special summon to your side of the field if you control a spellcaster type monster, which is really nice. And if this card is in your graveyard during your opponent's end phase, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls or one face-up monster that you control and destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card, which is a great effect to be able to just immediately get this card back on the field. We then play a single copy of Gigabyte as well. Gigabyte is a good one of in here because it has the ability that if you control a spellcaster monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, just like your copy of Archfiend Eater, but it's a unique ability is when this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one monster with 1500 attack and 200 defense from your deck, which is your Archfiend Eater. We then play a single copy of the Awakening of the Possessed level 5 monster. The Earth one is the best one in my opinion, because this card is basically a monster reborn that has the ability that you can special summon this card from your hand or deck by sending one face-up spellcaster monster and one face-up Earth level 4 lower monster that you control to the graveyard. And when this card is summoned, it has the ability that when this card is special summoned by this effect, you can special summon out a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard but negate its effects. It also has the ability, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to add a spiritual earth art from your deck to your hand, or a possessed spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is always going to be the possessed spell or trap that you're going to grab with this card. We then play a Dogmatica package in this deck as well, which is 3 copies of Ecclesia. Ecclesia is really good because she is a spellcaster monster that has the ability that she cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summoned from the extra deck, and you can only use each of the following effects for once per turn. That if a monster special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can activate this effect to add a Dogmatica card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of herself. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because this deck can actually summon out some really big normal summons. We then play a single copy of Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis. This card is a good boss monster for the deck because she has the ability that during the main phase, if a monster special from the extra deck is on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then if you control another Dogmatica monster, you can negate one face-up monster on the field's effects until the end of this turn, which is a great effect to basically be a walking negate that can special special summon itself as a 2500 attack point monster. We then play a single copy of Dogmatica Maximus because it's super easy to summon in this deck and has the ability to banish a Fusion, Synchro, XZ, or a Link monster from your graveyard to just immediately special summon this card from your hand to your side of the field. And then during the main phase, you can activate this effect to send 2 monsters with the different names from your X deck to the graveyard, and then your opponent has to do the same and sending 2 cards from their X deck to the graveyard, which is a pretty good effect, but you can't special summon monsters from the X deck for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because you're basically using this card to get 2 cards out of your opponent's X deck. We're then playing 3 copies of the Tenyi Spirit Adahara. This card is here because it works really well with our Awakening of the Possessed monster and also helps us get into some monsters into the extra deck that you guys will see in just a minute. We then play 3 copies of Effect Veiler as well because Effect Veiler is a great hand trap in here and works really well with the monster that we have in the extra deck. Really good to be able to just negate monster effects with this card. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster is basically here so we can deal with our opponent's back row, so we really don't have to deal with it as we go in for game with all of our familiar possessed monsters. We play a single copy of Called by the Grave, because Called by the Grave basically stops our opponent's hand traps, which is really nice. We play 2 copies of Nadir. Nadir is really good in this deck because it has the ability to send a monster from our X deck to the graveyard, and then you get to add a Dogmatica monster or a Fallen of Albaz from your deck or graveyard to your hand that has attack less than or equal to the sent monster to the graveyard, which is a pretty good effect, but it does lock you out of the X deck for the rest of the turn. But this card is a really good card because it can get a specific monster out of our X deck to get us to search, which you guys will see in just a second. We then play 2 copies of Awakening of the Possessed. This card is a great 2 of. I did consider playing this card as a 3 of because it does stack, which is really, really good. It has the ability that monsters you control gain 300 attack for each different attribute that you control, and Charmer and familiar possessed monsters that you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is a really good effect to basically protect your monsters. It also has the ability if a spellcaster monsters with 1850 original attack is normal or special summoned to your field, you get to draw a card, and you can only use this effect of this card once per turn, but that attack boost does stack, which is pretty good. We then play 3 copies of Spirit Charmers, which was actually the name of the structure deck, which is kind of cool that these came out of. You can discard a card to take 2 cards from your deck with different names, each that are a Charmer monster, a familiar possessed monster, and or a possessed spell or trap, and add one of them to your hand and set the other to your field, which is why I just ended up playing 2 copies of Awakening of the Possessed. So that's it for these spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Dogmatica Punishment. This is basically here because you can search it extremely easily, and it has the ability to target a face-up monster your opponent control, send a monster from your X deck that has higher attack to your graveyard, and then if you destroy that monster, but it does lock you out of the X deck, which is again not that big of a deal, because if you're playing the Dogmatica package, you really don't need it. We then play a single copy of Shadow Schism. Shadow Schism is actually a really good card in this deck because you play so many different attributes and you're able to summon out cards like your Construct and Winda to really control the board or deal with really powerful monsters that your opponent might summon. This card is easily searchable by just sending a Poke alone from the X deck to the graveyard with one of your Dogmatica cards, and then getting this card to search from deck with your copy of your Poke alone. But this card has the ability that during your main phase, you can fusion summon a Shadow Fusion monster from your X deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from the field or graveyard, but it can't attack directly. Then you can send one monster that your opponent controls with the same attribute to the graveyard, which is a pretty good effect to deal with your opponent's monsters. We then play 2 copies of Unpossessed. Unpossessed is a really good trap card that makes it so Charmer monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle, and if a familiar possessed monster that you control attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack points, boosting it up to 2650, which is pretty good. It also has the ability that during damage calculation only, it gains that attack. And if a monster that you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect while this card is already face up on your field, you can activate the effect that you can special summon one spellcaster monster with 1500 defense from your deck, whose attribute is different from at least one monster that was destroyed on your side of the field, which is really good because basically you can summon out your copy of Ecclesia off this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Possessed Partnership. Possessed Partnership is a good 3 of as well because it has the ability to special summon out a spellcaster type monster with 1500 defense from your hand or graveyard in attack position or in face down defense position. Then if you control a monster with 2 or more different attributes, you can destroy a face up card on the field. And you manage this card from your graveyard and then target one possessed continuous spell or trap in the graveyard and place it face up on your field, which is why I ended up only playing 2 copies of the Awakening of the Possessed. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of the Earth Charmer because it works really well with all the Earth monsters that we're playing. 1 copy of the Light Charmer. This card works really, really well with all of the Dogmatica cards we're playing. And a single copy of the Dark Charmer because this card works really well with the Dark monsters, so I'm playing a single copy of it. I don't feel like you need the Water, Wind, or Fire ones in this particular build, but you can include them if you want to. We're then playing a single copy of Access Code because it's going to get us a bunch of pops on the field, but if you're looking for a little bit more of a budget option, you can drop this card for a Boral Sword. We then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, 1 copy of Selene, which is why I play the Effect Failures, because this card can actually get the Effect Failure onto your side of the field extremely easily if you discard it to the graveyard, because basically if there's 3 spells on the field or in the graveyards, then you can put counters on this card and then remove the 3 spell counters off this card to be able to special summon a spellcaster back to your side of the field, which then basically instantly climbs up into the copy of Access Code, which is super good. We then play a single copy of Phoenix to pop spells and traps and a Crystron Needle Fiber. Crystron Needle Fiber is a really good tech card in here. You don't have to play it if you don't want to. If you're looking for more of a budget option, you can play Cerberus. But the reason I'm playing this card in this deck is because basically if you can make this, you can make Access Code Talker, because you basically make this, put an Effect Failure on the field, link the Effect Failure in this away to summon Selene, and then use Selene's effect to be able to put the 3 spell counters on her, remove the 3 spell counters, bring back Effect Failure, and then make your copy of Access Code, which is a really good combo for the deck. Playing a single copy of IP Masquerena because IP Masquerena is a really, really good card in the deck to be able to go into Unicorn during your opponent's turn. 1 copy of Nitria Beast, which is why I play the copies of Adahara, to go in a copy of Nitria Beast or Barkion, depending on if I have my level 5 on my side of the field. These cards are really good because basically your copy of Barkion eats traps and your copy of Beast eats spells, which is really good. For the Shadow Schism targets, we're going to be playing a single copy of Winda and a single copy of Construct. These are basically here because these are the ones that you're going to be summoning off your copy of Schism, but the one that you're going to be using to search your copy of Schism is your copy of a Pokelone, because a Pokelone has the ability that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a shadow card from your deck or graveyard to your hand and then discard a card, which is how you're going to be searching your copy of Schism, by sending it to the graveyard with your copy of either Nadir or Dogmatica Punishment to be able to get to that really, really powerful card. We then play a single copy of Titaniclad, because Titaniclad is a really good card in this deck to basically get the search during the end phase when it's sent to the graveyard of a Dogmatica monster. Really good card in the deck, but you really only need a single copy. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to be able to play with. I highly recommend if you've not played with Charmer Familiar Possessed, you definitely should, because it's a super fun deck to be able to play with, especially with how old school the Familiar Possessed and Charmer monsters are. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.